What's going on? It's your boy Dalton from the Petrol List, and I want to talk about three things today. I kind of have this trend of talking about three things, two car things and a Formula One thing. Well, today I want to talk about Lewis Hamilton going to Ferrari and why I think that Ferrari is going to back Lewis Hamilton for their next championship. I want to talk about the FIA's new censorship rules, and I want to answer what exactly is the relationship between the FIA and Formula One. What kind of revenue do they bring in, and also what could Formula One do to replace the FIA? Can they replace the FIA? I've got answers to that. But first, I want to talk about a car issue that affects us, the regular people. And that is purists are the real reason classic cars lose their value after a certain amount of time. I got to tell you, I got a ton of notes for this video because there's so much to cover, and there are going to be times when I'm going to be actually reading the notes because I put down some thoughts that I really want to make sure I get out. So the first is with the purists are the real reason classic cars lose value over time, and I think it's fairly well known by now that classic cars have this like retention cycle, this value retention cycle of about 25 years, and it's like once a car gets hot, that car stays hot for about 25 years, and then its value kind of drops off a cliff. Now I'm talking about how about the 60s muscle cars. There's a time where you could watch the Mecum or the Barrett Jackson auctions, or just look at your classified ads, and a given muscle car would be just going for an extraordinarily steep price compared to what it was before. And then in recent times, you've started to see some, not all, some muscle car prices start to go down. And then you start to see the rise of the 80s and 2000s sports cars starting to go up. And then some of those after 25 years will go down. There's, I think, a CRX that went for $77,000 at an auction, an MR2 pushing, similarly high numbers. But then eventually those cars will kind of fall out of favor with the automotive enthusiast community. And this is why. You see, when you're in high school or whatever, and you see the cars that you wish you had but you couldn't afford, eventually those cars get older. And the people who want those cars get older too. And what typically happens once people reach about middle age is they hit, either the peak of their, income and their purchasing power, and then they kind of plateau off from there, or, just that's kind of the normal cycle. You can finally buy the stuff that you wanted. And for me, Audi S4, Miata, and a new Bronco. And at some point in time, some of these things will go up in value, then they'll drop back down out of value. And it's because you can afford these cars when you're hitting your, 30s, 40s, 50s. And then what happens 25 years after you turn 50? Well, according to statistics, most of us die, right? And so there goes your marketplace for these cars. Now, some cars do survive that trend, but I'm going to get into just a little bit of why this occurs with some cars and why it doesn't occur with others. So people don't get hyped by old music. They might like a song and appreciate the song, but they don't really take it on as theirs. It's someone else's, and it feels like it's from a different time. Now, make a remix of that song, and the new generation will not only own that song, but they'll often forget or even not even know who the original artist was for that song. Liberty Walk, they did the same thing with some amazing body kits with the Lamborghini Miura and the Ferrari F40. Now, if Ferrari and Lamborghini weren't such, famous brands, and all you saw was that Liberty Walk F40 and that Liberty Walk Miura, you might think that Liberty Walk was the originator of both of these cars. But, at the end of the day, that is immaterial because all you know is that whatever that thing is, whoever created it, you're vibing with that car because it took those design elements from a bygone era, it modernized it, it made it more palatable to our current sensibilities, and it made a banger that everybody in the current car community can kind of relate to. Now, let's see, what else do I have? A key point. Liberty Walk, they modded those cars. Now, I don't mean modded in the sense that they modified them. I mean modded in the sense that they modernized them. They now don't look quite so old anymore. And they look relatable to the public who is, alive and kicking right now. And it turned an F40 into something that is, hey, that's a cool thing to look at. Kind of like how we might, look at some old remake of a song. And then, once Kanye or whoever puts their twist on it, now it's a song from my era, or whatever the remix is gonna be. But that is what companies like Liberty Walk do for some of these older cars. There's some car companies that are smart enough to have constantly modernized their cars all the way through time. Porsche, I would say, has got to be the best example of a company that modernized. So the Porsche 911, the original Porsche, like 956 and the original 964 Porsches, or whatever it is, they look so similar to the current vehicles that there is a tie. There's a direct relationship between the current vehicles and the original vehicles. To know the current vehicles is also to know and recognize the old vehicles. That doesn't happen all the time. I think Japanese brands are particularly susceptible to this, and European brands are now starting to be susceptible to this too. An old BMW used to have everything that you would expect from a BMW. It had the 4 round headlights. It had the kidney grill for a while. It was doing the shark nose. And was it Hofmeister kink? Something kink in the rear window. And you could easily tell, at a glance that you're looking at a BMW. Now they have gotten away from that continuous design language, and that is what makes certain cars, age and become culturally irrelevant, compared to other cars. You look at an old Honda Civic compared to a new Honda Civic, and they look nothing alike. And unless somebody's modding that old Honda Civic to make it, look like something that is palatable to today, it is culturally irrelevant. So Ford did that with the Mustang, I want to say in 2005. They brought back that older school looking Mustang, which made the actual old Mustang relevant again, and they've maintained for the most part the look of the old Mustang, and now you have this nice continuity of Mustangs, and to know a new Mustang is to know an old Mustang. They did the same thing with the Bronco in 2021. Now, we talked about the 25-year-old thing. You get to be 40, you can afford the car you wanted in high school, or 50 or whatever. By the time you're 50, you got all these cars. 25 years later, boom, you're out of here, and there's no more market for these cars, right? So it's up to tuners at this part to modify, aka modernize these old cars. And this is why the original Miata is so popular and is such a cultural icon, through till this day. Number one, they did the thing that Porsche did, where the new Miata looks, very similar to the original Miata. So they did that, but what they did even more than the lineage of Porsches is people were encouraged to mod Miatas. And so, while a Porsche and Porsche, I'm not picking on Porsche because I love Porsches. I actually, even want one at some point. So I need y'all to like and subscribe so I can, add one to, to the old collection. But they took it a step further because a lot of, Porsche folks and I'm going to move away from Porsche. I'm going to pick on Jaguar for a second. The Jaguar, the Jaguar XJS, arguably a beautiful convertible, especially for its time, is now about as culturally relevant as a Teletubby. Whereas the Miata is still a cultural icon. Here's the trajectory. The XJS was a luxury car from a luxury brand, and you best not modify that. Whereas the Miata, dime a dozen. It was, cheap fun, and people made off-roaders out of it. They made race cars out of it. They made drag cars out of it. And I'm sure if I Google it, and I will, somebody has probably made a Miata pickup truck. So every build that you would like to make out of your Miata is available and probably well documented by at least 12 car enthusiasts on the YouTubes. So the car remains a celebrity, and the XJS, although beautiful, is now just, a victim of the idea that once a car leaves the factory, it should never be modded. I have always been really hesitant to commit to whether or not I think modding an old car is a good idea. But much like music, modding a car, modernizing a car, brings it into the current vernacular. And I think it preserves the generational enthusiasm for that car. So I think companies like Liberty Walk, they keep, the F40, the Miura, all that kind of stuff relevant to the newer generations as the older generations who lusted after the original cars start to go away. And, while you do want to have some, factory models left over, I think so long as you're not EV swapping a classic, stop doing that if you're watching this video. As long as you're not EV swapping it, modding it, putting better brakes, putting a little V6 in a Miata or a Liberty Walk body kit on a Miura, as long as it's tastefully done and it's not electric, man, I think that is a really good way of, keeping these cars in the forefront of everyone's imagination. I want to move on. Let's talk about the new censorship rules from the FIA. And it's pretty draconian. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay out a little bit of what the FIA has said. There are other channels that go through the rules bit by bit a lot better than I do. I'm not that kind of guy. I'm not that kind of channel. But in short, the FIA's new censorship measures. The purpose is supposedly to maintain a professional, respectful image for Formula One, like aka, no cussing, no swearing, no tattoos, no punching, no fighting, no name calling, no cat calling, no whatever. But the problem is that it extends beyond what is said on the racetrack and during the races and goes off into off the track life. Now, keep in mind, these are public figures. All these people on the grid are public figures, and you are censoring what they can say in public statements, in interviews, and social media posts, at press conferences, which, if you're a Formula One driver, I would imagine is actually most of your day. So effectively, you're being censored. And the FIA says, and I'm quoting this word, FIA says, anything that can cause moral injury. I can't think of a more broad word. Moral injury to the FIA. It could result in the loss of championship points and even disqualification from driving events, and you are on probation. You are on probation for what you say for 2 years. So something you say in a press conference, it can come back to bite you in the butt 2 years later. So you picture Mohammed bin Sulayem. He's staying up late at night and he's drinking a Mauve, and he's just like, you know what, Hamilton really pissed me off. Let me comb through all his press conferences and see if I can find something that I found to be morally injurious. Is that a word? Morally injuring to myself. Bam. Fine. There's a fine. So, Formula One would no longer be about who can construct the fastest car or the best car and who can drive said car the best. It would be about who can go a full season without hurting Mohammed bin Sulayem's feelings. That would be integrated into Formula One. I don't think anybody wants that. Did he not get the memo that people are kind of over, being told what to say and being told how to think? People are kind of done with that, and I think that if that becomes fruition and the Formula One drivers don't walk out and they're just like okay with being turned into school marms and silent people, I think Formula One is going to lose a lot of fan base, and people are just going to get sick of it. They don't want mindless, thoughtless robots that are driving around, in circles, zigzagged may they be. They don't want them to be automatons. I think that's the right word. I haven't used that word in a sentence in probably a couple of decades, so I'm guessing I used it right. Let me know in the comments if I didn't. So that brought me into a question. And that is, can Formula One survive without the FIA? And word, yes. They would have to replace the FIA, of course. But let's talk numbers really quick. In 2021, and this was four seasons ago? In 2021, Formula One took in $2.1 billion. FIA takes in, depending on what research you do, they take in between $58 to $49 million per year. So financially, could Formula One replace the FIA? Yeah, they could. And get this. Formula One is just one. It's the biggest contributor. It's the biggest, I guess you could say, employer of the FIA. But World Rally Championship, Formula E, karting, touring cars, to name, many other racing series, those also contribute to the FIA's annual revenue. So it's not the entire $58 to $49 million per year that Formula One would be in charge of replacing. It is some fraction of that. I have yet to find a pie chart of what Formula One contributes to the FIA annually, but they would be responsible for only a portion of that 58 to $49 million. I think that Formula One could definitely cover that. Now, what would Formula One have to replace? Well, that is simply, what does the FIA do for Formula One? So the FIA sets rules and regulations. They're in charge of race safety and safety enforcement, monitoring licenses and handing out licenses, technical scrutiny, technical monitoring, making sure that the cars are built to the specs that they're supposed to be, and they are responsible for, the stewards and other technicians that work the track during the race. So it wouldn't be some quick thing that Formula One could just replace in a season. It would probably take a while to replace the FIA. It would mean putting an entire workforce together, putting basically an entire company together. But I think that if there's any entity that could do it, it is Formula One. And I'm pretty sure that Formula One has thought about that in the past. They just haven't pulled the trigger because it would be difficult. But I gotta say, by the time you're letting one dude, and I do think this is one dude typing into ChatGPT, how can I piss off Formula One drivers and fans? If they're at the point where they're at the mercy of one dude who is, replaceable versus an entire international dynamo of a sport, I think you might, as said dynamo, you might start looking into how you can replace the FIA before they start to bring your brand down. And some might argue that the FIA is already bringing Formula One's brand down. Speaking of brands, the last thing I wanted to talk about was Lewis Hamilton and Ferrari, and this is going to be quick. And all I'm saying is that after all these pictures, after all these photographs that essentially broke the internet, Lewis Hamilton and Ferrari, the brand match made in heaven, I can't help but think that if Lewis Hamilton is anywhere near Charles Leclerc in, lap times and speed and all that kind of stuff, oh my, they are going to want to get the 8th championship into Lewis Hamilton's hands, because if Charles Leclerc won his first championship, the world will celebrate for 3 years. If Lewis Hamilton gets his 8th championship, the world will celebrate for 3 decades. And I'm not saying that because, because I'm a Lewis Hamilton fan, I believe that everybody, believes in, the value of Lewis Hamilton victories and all that. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying reality is reality. Charles Leclerc has 8 Formula One wins. 8 Formula One wins. Lewis Hamilton has 8 Formula One championships. Big difference. In the, mid to late, 20 teens and, up through, this season, or whatever, whenever Charles Leclerc got to Ferrari, he's been leading Ferrari. Well, save for, Verstappen and his championships, Lewis Hamilton has been leading Formula One. And I'm not saying that he replaced Bernie Ecclestone or that he replaced, Mohammed bin Salem in terms of actually running it. But when you talk about a draw to the sport, there are always certain individuals, whether it's LeBron James or Kobe Bryant or Michael Jordan or Serena Williams or Tiger Woods or Joe Montana or a Tom Brady. There are always these super mega hero characters that carry the league, and once they're gone, the league has to figure out, how do we replace this? How do we put butts in seats? How do we sell merch? How do we sell tickets? Ferrari knows this, and I think that they're going to want to cash in on this. And Fred Vasseur, while he is a fan of Lewis Hamilton, guess who was one of the bigger contributors to the urgency with which Ferrari took on Lewis Hamilton and the nearly $500 million investment? That's right. The head of Ferrari. Can't remember his name. I'll put it up here. Or there. I'll put it somewhere. But anyway, Fred Vasseur is the type who would like for the drivers to fight it out and, let the fastest person win. And I'm sure, unlike McLaren, they would decide that earlier in the season. So say in the first 1 or 2, 3 races, if Hamilton is the fastest, then I'm sure they would put their eggs in the Hamilton basket and tell Leclerc to get in line, and maybe a little bit more reluctantly, if Leclerc was a lot faster than Hamilton, then they're going to put their eggs in the Leclerc bucket and tell Hamilton to get in line. But with the investment, not just social media, but financial investment, the image investment that Ferrari has made with Lewis Hamilton, I can imagine that they now want that to translate into a Lewis Hamilton-led championship. I mean, I was looking at the post. I can't even imagine the pressure. I can't imagine the pressure. Because these other drivers, Max Verstappen isn't going to just lay down and go to sleep in 2025. Charles Leclerc isn't. Fernando Alonso isn't. The McLarens aren't. It's not like just because Hamilton moved to Ferrari, he's automatically going to win the championship. But to me, it looks like that's the kind of pressure that Ferrari is putting on him. And for that reason, I think that they will actually try to back him as well. Let me know what you think. Tell me what you think in the comments. Do you think that Ferrari is going to back Hamilton? Are they going to back Leclerc? Or are they going to wait until 3-4 races in and see who's fastest? All right, that was a super, super duper long episode. But it's what I felt like talking about. That's what the Petrol List is. So thanks for watching. I've been Dalton. This has been the Petrol List. And you have been great. I'm out. Sorry, I was wearing the Marine hat. Okay, I'm really out. Peace.